I just finished recording the episode with Iñaki Amate. He's a senior executive of the design industry. He's the chairman of the European Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong and also a partner leading in design and wave space at EY, Ernst & Young. We had an amazing conversation with a lot of hot topics, artificial intelligence, broad meaning of design and its implications in the geopolitics of Hong Kong, Greater China, the relationship with Europe, and many interesting topics. Stick with us until the end. Welcome to the last meeting of the week, second episode of the second season, and one that has been in the works for quite a bit. First time we spoke about this one was, can't remember when, probably June before the holidays, and then we met end of August and we discussed a few things. And I believe it's going to be very educational, both for us and for the public as well. Because even though we normally target an audience that is involved professionally and personally with architecture and design, normally we talk about design from a very narrow point of view. And today we're going to enlarge that and expand the concept and touch many different things that probably will change the way we look at things and hopefully the way we will look at others and different dynamics. Welcome to the last meeting of the week, Iñaki Amate.
Thank you very much.
The ñ must be a tough thing for you in the English world. How do you manage that?
I'm very bad. Here, everybody thinks I'm Japanese before I meet them face to face. Inaki Amate, you know.
But do you need to make a compromise with the N and the ñ?
Yeah, most of the time, because for most of the keyboards in this part of the world, it's almost impossible to find the ñ.
Yes, no, I have it memorized. It's something that I don't think people know. I have memorized in my hands the Spanish keyboard.
Yes.
So even if in that one there is not an ñ, the configuration is so I can write with it.
Yes.
I normally switch between three of them, which is the English, the Italian, and the Spanish. So I have the accents and everything. It's because the Italian also have the crazy thing about their accents. I don't know how to explain that. In any case, Iñaki Amate is you are many things. Your life is very busy. I would say your main occupation is being partner at EY, Ernst & Young.
Right. Yes.
You are head of innovation and experience for Asia Pacific, head of digital for Greater China, and head of design as well for Asia Pacific. You are involved in several chambers of commerce. You have your own personal project, and I think, all summarized, you are a super curious person that it makes conversation very enriching. We are going to touch topics that are super interesting, from AY to your view in the future of Hong Kong, the world relationship between Europe and China, and many other things. But in order to give a little context to the conversation, do you mind helping us follow you from your trajectory from Zaragoza, from Spain?
Definitely.
Until today?
Yeah, absolutely. Very happy to do that. I mean, I guess I basically started my life like in a provincial city in Zaragoza in Spain. I had the magnificent lack of finding at that time my wife, because she was studying as an Erasmus exchange student in my university, and she offered me the possibility of following her to Finland and with that opening the world to me. So I ended basically living almost 20 years in Finland. The moment I landed in Helsinki, I found out that it's a very different place, but I fell in love. I mean, I fell in love with the people. I fell in love with the nature. I started to work first in the wine industry, lobbying for the alcohol monopoly for retail distribution and importation of alcohol beverages in Finland, lobbying and trying to keep the monopoly inside the European Union. So I was working with the CEO and the CMO to convince the wine producers that the monopoly is a great concept, even though it's forbidden inside the EU. But it was a fantastic experience. my passion was always around design, the mix of design, technology. I was a bit of a geek at heart, and then obviously I was studying business and economics, and I thought, okay, there has to be something in the intersection, and I found it in Finland. I was able to take some courses at the Media Lab, and eventually I ended working for the first internet consultancy firm in Scandinavia, and I was so lucky that my first client was Nokia, and I was in charge of a big part of Nokia.com at the time, that it was probably the most visited website in the world. So that was basically a defining moment in my professional career, because from then I started to realize that what we were doing, building websites, it was very similar to something that I wanted to study, which was architecture. And I started to have conversations with people about the concept of the architecture of the services that we were creating. And eventually we realized that maybe it's not going to be architecture of a service, but it's going to be more like the design of the service. And that basically evolved over the years. But then in around 2004, three guys from London, they managed to get a project with Nokia, approached me and say, hey, would you like to join us to set up this, around this project? We want to set up an office in Helsinki. We want to build this company. I said, okay, I'll give it a try. So I started to work with these guys, and we started in a company called Fjord. And that company grew up to become what is probably today still like the largest design company in the world. We were very lucky that to write a few waves. We wrote the design thinking wave, we wrote the user experience and the service design wave, and we together with Nokia and a few other clients afterwards, we started to grow quite a lot. We opened offices in many places. I helped to open a lot of these offices, and I moved countries with this company. Eventually, we sold the business to Accenture, one of the largest consulting firms in the world. And eventually, with them, I came to Hong Kong to help them to set the business here in this part of the world, which I did for a few years before. It was the time to go back to Europe. My family wanted to stay in this part of the world, and then this when EY came and said, why don't you help us to set up a similar business for us? And that's what I've been doing for the last 6 years, basically building the design experience, the design team across Asia Pacific. That's what I've been doing.
That's the opportunity that pulled you into Hong Kong, correct?
That's right, yes.
Fantastic. As I mentioned before, today we're going to span a little bit the concept of design. And I think for people outside the corporate world, we use that word in a different way. And I think it's very enriching to try to define the concept of design. Because there are a lot of disciplines, and probably the ones that I listed, that I was sharing with you during lunch, doesn't carry it completely. So you have the UX, service design, business model design, digital transformation, brand strategy, and design. Most conversations revolve about just the last bullet point that I just read. What is design for a big consulting firm?
Well, design is actually just another way to do problem solving. But it's a very structured and empathetic way of doing problem solving, because what you do is you try to understand for whom are you designing a solution, and that you try to understand what are going to be the stakeholders. Then you try to, together with the stakeholders, come up with potential solutions that you are going to bring to life in different medias, in different formats, depending on what is that the solution is going to look like. And eventually you are going to do it in a very low fidelity in order to basically not spend too many resources and test if that idea that you are trying to conceptualize is going to work or not. So once you basically validate if you are going in the right direction, then you can take it to the next level of fidelity. But you can apply that to almost anything. So you can apply it to something as abstract as a strategy, a business, or it can be something very tangible like a piece of furniture, right?
Yes.
So it really goes through a very wide spectrum. And I think what probably made people to be conscious that, I mean, it can evolve from something tangible like a physical product to something as abstract as a new regulation for a government is I think that the shift to digital, I think when the digital technologies came in and people realized that we can create applications in different mediums, in different channels, then we can probably start thinking of what are the key elements, the key components and the process, and then abstract this to almost anything.
It is true. I think I was mentioning before one example that I do stupidly when I just visit a market that is new for me, and instead of having some preconceived ideas, sometimes it's shocking for the client that I just go and said, I just want to listen to what you have to say, and then we will identify the problems and we will find solutions. When we were doing the briefing of this episode, one of the I think most I don't think iconic is the word, but it's the one that comes up to my mind. The most illustrative examples that I have listened to in a very long time is the reinsertion of inmates. How to improve the reinsertion of inmates as a design service that you did for the New Zealand government. And if you could share with us a little bit the process and let's say the ins and outs of that project, I think it would be very good, I think, for us to learn something new in terms of hopefully some other governments, but also for people to understand that what we are talking about when we're saying design.
Yes, I think everything starts with basically what is the purpose, right? When you have an organization like a government that understands that there is a problem like the reinsertion of inmates that needs to be addressed, that typically when it's been done in the traditional bureaucratic way or political way has not worked, and is ready to have an open mindset to bring people from outside that is going to help them to really look at the problem from a different perspective, that is the fundamental change. Because then after that, then you can basically start bringing the experts that are going to introduce collaborative tools and methods to make sure that you are going to start listening to all the parts of the society that are involved. So you need to talk about those that have been actually inmates, those that are currently inmates. Then you talk about you talk with the families, you talk with the people that are part of the system, both in the prisons, but then also in the judicial system, to try to understand, what are the motivations for some of the existing parameters, and then go with a very open mind about putting everyone on a room to really start thinking about those key moments of problematic moments that are identified in the current customer journey. That helps you to really say, okay, what can be done in order to improve them, and everybody go with open mind to see from their perspective what is possible and what is not. And then in a collaborative manner, you are going to find what are the best compromises that are eventually going to help everyone, and everybody will feel that they are actually part of the solution by the end of the process.
So how did you improve this process of reinsertion in New Zealand? What was there, let's say, you remember that you can recall a measurable outcome?
A KPI, actually, that normally would be in terms of satisfaction of the different parties involved, but I don't have the numbers, I don't remember exactly. But yes, basically what we did was in different key moments of the customer journey, look into those small increments of satisfaction that we can get designed together with the different parties involved.
And I imagine that the changes implemented were let's say concentrated in, let's say, one part after they go out. It was something that involved even the process of the time that they spent inside prison.
It affects everything, because if you think about it, I mean, what you want is that the people, before they go out, they already have, they are mentally prepared, but also probably to some degree educated or indoctrinated or briefed about what is that they need in order to be successful when they go out. So you need to work already before they go out, and then you need to have also you need to start looking into what are the elements that are missing or they are not working when people get out. So you probably come up with ideas that are going to help you to understand that people probably need some more additional support in some steps, in order to find a good place where to land, where they have the right type of support. So all that is something that you need to look in detail as well.
Do you feel that, for example, in a process like this, in a project of this kind, there is pushback against change from some of the stakeholders? How do you maneuver against that?
Well, I think if projects like this one have not been very much spread globally, it's because, number one, is because I don't think people are aware that there are different ways of doing it, that you could actually approach an issue like this with a completely different method. But the second one is probably because people are always a bit worried to try to introduce elements different from what they know. And in this particular case, it actually requires that you're basically brave enough to embrace it, right? To embrace change. Mm-hmm. This is something that you need to be ready to take. Not many communities and societies, I think, probably have gone through that process of really and thinking about, is this something that we are willing to take? Are we willing to go this far? You know?
Yeah. No. It's interesting. This project, among many others, could be probably englobed in the concept of design thinking, which is something that for people that are in the industry or have studied masters or done things in business administration, we know of. But again, it's not very obvious. Design thinking. Can you help me? I was going to have the courage to try to define it myself, but since you're here and you are a more, let's say, higher authority figure, can you help me define this process?
Yes, it's what I mentioned before. I mean, the process of design thinking. But basically, design thinking, what it does is tries to democratize the concept that design is not very complicated, and everyone should be able to understand what are the main principles, which is, like explained before, the first one is to try to understand for whom you are going to be designing something. The second one is to try to understand what kind of ideas you could actually come up in order to resolve that kind of problem that you have identified, and then bring them to life in a very easy manner so that you can actually validate if those ideas could become or not something tangible, worth investing or not. I think that design thinking has been quite a standard buzzword in the industry for the last 2 decades. But obviously, when you start thinking a little bit about what it has brought in, I think it has brought a lot of really good things. It has brought the awareness and the understanding of what design has been widely spread. And now you have design thinking taught at schools, obviously at universities, or design in general. But then you need to be able to counterbalance that with the fact that just because you are aware of what design thinking is, it doesn't make you a designer. Mm-hmm. A designer is a profession. And in the same way that you have other professions, to be a practitioner, you probably need to have gone through a number of years of education and a number of years of practice that helps you to become better and better. And then, like in any profession, you basically need to develop the craft to a certain degree in order to become a master, right?
Mm-hmm. You mentioned before that something very interesting that you mentioned during lunch. We should have actually probably recorded lunch. Maybe it's something that we should do like a behind the scenes. You have to join in the brief, and then we create content out of this. Design thinking is, you mentioned verbatim, is very good for product and service design.
Yes,
but it has some limits.
Yeah, I think when you have more or less defined the territory of what you want to achieve with it, it's actually it's a good working methodology. Mm-hmm. The problem is when you basically need to come up with something that it doesn't exist, or when you need to do something completely different than what you have done before. So think about organizations that they might see that they are under a threat of being obsolete. Mm-hmm. If they don't do something about it. I think they might need to, if they apply just the methodology as it is, they might miss some key success factors that otherwise could put at risk the entire ambition to really implement a very big change. So what we have identified, we started to play with this idea that, is design thinking enough or not? And we realized that for organizations that need to pivot because they have that kind of threat, maybe the first thing that they need to do is actually to understand that they are under threat. That's the first one, to be self-aware. And then the second thing is then to start thinking a little bit about what are those threats? How those threats are going to materialize, and then they need to start doing an analysis, a self-analysis of how ready we are to pivot and how ready we are to take the risk that is going to mean to pivot. Do we have the guts to really pivot so much? So with that, then you need to start really assessing the ambition, the level of ambition that your organization has. Once you are able to understand that, well, we are not so ambitious as Elon Musk to take a radical shift and start doing something completely different, but we are willing to take this level of risk. Then with that, you can start operating. You can start ideating. You can start thinking about potential scenarios of what your organization could become, and then start playing a little bit about modeling, whether your organization is going to have all the elements that is necessary to succeed in that potential scenario.
So you need to have crafted a set of tools that allow you to go to the depths of the psychology of that organization.
Precisely, yes. So you need to be able to understand the psychological risk that the leadership is willing to take, but also the organization itself. Is it very averse or not to take those, or is it empowered to really make decisions that sometimes could feel today very, very difficult? So you are absolutely right.
One of the anecdotes that came up before was the project that you guys were doing also for the New Zealand government regarding the development of the strategy for environmental policies for the next 30 years.
Yes.
I imagine that requires a lot of soul searching, not from, let's say, a wide, super wide angle, because you're not dealing with a corporation, you're dealing with a country.
Yes, I think I'm mostly excited when design is applied to what it looks sometimes like impossible challenges. Mm-hmm. And designing a fantastic new product or service might actually be one of those. But I think where I really feel motivated and I think my team is also very much looking forward is those kind of challenges that you are given the opportunity to redesign a new educational program for a country or for a region, and I think we had our team in New Zealand had that opportunity to really participate, lead, and to some degree help to put together in a very orthodox manner or unorthodox manner the necessary components to start building a new regulation, which traditionally is done by politicians and regulators, law firms, and so on. But in this particular case, they trusted designers to do that kind of work, and I think it's because the nature of the designer, the designers are by nature, we are curious, we are empathetic, and we are the kind of people that are very inclusive, because as we explained, in order to come up with a solution, you want to basically make sure that it's going to play for everybody's needs. Yep. And when you are designing something as important as the regulation that is going to affect the lives of multiple generations in a place, you need to really think about what is the best method to really capture all these different perspectives, and then distill what is going to be what are going to be those elements that are worth putting forward, right?
Yeah, when we were discussing in the past couple of weeks, the European Commission published a report that was written by Mario Draghi's team, and I brought it up to you from the angle of just raw monetary investment, cash investment, but you mentioned that there was actually a very interesting part that spoke about education and what are, let's say, the challenges or the weak points rather that the European Union has. Your wife and yourself, your wife is Finnish, yourself is you are very involved with the Finnish community. What examples can we draw from what the Finnish did in the 60s after the Second World War?
Yeah, I think for me, some of the big learnings were that Finland very soon realized after the war they had with Russia that in order to rebuild the country, they had to invest heavily in ensuring that they are going to be a well-educated country so that they can be a lot more in control of their future. And the education was the foundation, and they decided that they are going to put a team that is going to decide the education system, and it's going to be by experts that they are going to be designing what that system is going to be, and it's going to be a system that is not going to be necessarily impacted by the politicians in every political cycle. Looking backwards, probably that has changed a lot over the decades, but I think that the original intent still remains. So to today, I think it's still very much defined by the central organization, central education organization in Finland. The second one, I think one small example that for me is quite remarkable is that in the post-war, I mean, you can imagine there was quite a lot of poverty, but one of the main decisions that they made was that every single child at school would need to have food. So lunch was served always at school, and still today is the case. And I think the original intent was that, I mean, everybody will have at least something warm, before you go home, because you never know if at home you will have that food. Still today, there are some kids that probably this is the main source of proteins and vitamins that they have. Yeah. And that makes it extremely evident how important education is when you are basically saying, we need the kids to be able to be in an environment where they are healthy, they are actually, they don't need to worry about the economic status, because everybody is going to be served the same kind of food, and then everybody will have the same opportunities regardless of what is your status. So there's a public system, there are no differences between schools, private and public schools don't exist, there's just public schools, and then everyone has the opportunity to basically get at the end the same chances to basically get any job, whatever you think is the best for you.
Yes, no, it's brilliant, and it's a little bit from the distance, it might seem a little bit unrelated, but if you actually think, okay, education is about going to school, receiving information, processing, keeping some of it, and then applying somewhere, somewhere. But the fact of saying, okay, but that chain of information is broken if the processing engine doesn't have enough energy to run on, and then therefore we need to just give protein, carbohydrates to that engine to be able to function. It's brilliant, but it requires something that, in my opinion, the beauty of all of this is that we have been saying, okay, problem solving and putting ourselves in other people's shoes.
Yes.
And that's the secret, changing the angle.
Yes.
Of finding a better process to create a better outcome. One of the key things that I didn't know how to reply before meeting you was, okay, now I understand. Now my understanding of design concept is wider. But my next question is, if I was an organization that wanted to have a team that offered this service, the next problem was, who do I hire? What type of professionals can build a team that is able to deliver this type of services? How do you hire, Iñaki?
So we look at a number of parameters, but are not necessarily only which school or what degree do you have. I mean, we have hired many times people without having proper education, but just because they had a fantastic portfolio and they had a brilliant personality. The good thing is that, I mean, since in the last 20 years, because the concept of design has become a lot more generalized, you no longer need to go to the few most famous design schools to get the best people. Today, you can find brilliant designers almost everywhere. To the point that, I mean, you find designers in almost every part of the organization, in many organizations, and they are actually doing very interesting jobs, from not just designing but also managing and leading organizations, right? So in our case, when we are in the professional service industry, which basically means we try to help our clients when they need help to come up with better product, services, or strategies, it means that we need to have people that are able to, talk to very senior people, but we need to have people that are very hands-on, right? So we typically look for what we call the T-shape. So the T-shape is basically somebody that is typically very specialized in certain craft, in certain domain, but they have a mindset that is the mindset and the curiosity of a generalist that wants to basically know a little bit about a lot of things. When we look for building studios, we are looking for people that are, we need to have people that can understand visual design, visual interaction design. Today, designers that come from schools, they come already educated around the aesthetic part and the logic part, but they also come with an extra, which is also understanding how to resolve complex problems. So that's like the meta level. And also they understand a lot more about the use of technology. So not just how to create the top layer, but also how to create something with coding sometimes, or with a physical product attached to it.
Yeah.
So that's one dimension. But we also look sometimes for people that come more from the field of sociology, psychology, facilitators, people that are able to extract from our clients what are the key issues, try to understand what is that you are not telling me that, is really behind the problem that your organization is going through. So, and then develop this in a craft, how we are able to design workshops and then execute those workshops in a way that makes everybody comfortable, willing to participate, regardless of the hierarchies and regardless of the where you're from, right?
Yes, I would love to be a fly on the wall on those meetings, because one of the most difficult things that I have to handle is I don't think I'm going to offend anyone by saying that going to Japan and trying to find out what's wrong with your approach, it's close to impossible. And number one, because they are very careful to express their opinions. I think because they fear offending their superiors and overstepping, not just because they're shy or incapable, they're perfectly capable. And also because they have different timings. So sometimes what you're saying is right, but you receive a silence. Maybe sometimes it's wrong, sometimes it's just not the time. And so I would love to learn and be better at doing this. And this is what you described just before I interrupted you, sorry, was this EY Wave Space Studios, in which you mentioned something before. You get together and you craft within yourselves all of these methods.
Yeah, basically we help to accelerate the identification of a problem and the realization of solutions, coming up with a roadmap of solutions, and is using a lot of the design thinking methodology together with the immense knowledge base that is behind all the experience that we have across EY in all the different departments and units that we have across the globe.
Yes. Apart from let's say looking at this difficulty in just gathering information, I think one of the key challenges, difficulties, and then therefore opportunities, is to take how to say, what the place that I'm trying to go to is the fact that I think we understand each other very well. When you explain to me things, it takes me a couple of minutes, not because we are intelligent, I'm extremely intelligent, but because we are talking in the same cultural cues.
Yes.
However, we don't live in Europe, we don't live in Spain, we live in Hong Kong, a special region of China, and Asia Pacific, where things follow different logics.
Yes.
I want to steer the conversation into that. Let's say, what is when delivering a design service to a European client, you need to speak in a certain way, but I imagine that the conversation takes a different turn when you are in this part of the world.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think this is a very fundamental question, that the differences between markets or countries in their understanding of design and the way to buy it as a service, the way to use it, you could talk almost on degrees of sophistication depending on the level of understanding of what design is in a community, in a society. You were talking before about Japan, and we can talk about also China. I think these are cultures that are typically very hierarchical, but they are also very much defined by the language and the way they write the language. One of the first things that struck me when I came to Hong Kong was that the high density of information in the interfaces, in the digital interfaces in China. And we had a long debate within my team about what is the origin of it. Is there a chance that we could actually affect that and start changing that? But it's so intrinsic to the fact that there is so much information that you need to be able to convey with the characters, and then how many characters you need to convey such a certain message. And the fact that, the same characters can actually convey multiple messages makes it important that you have the right combination, which in European languages, with a single word, you probably convey everything that you wanted to say. So it starts with something like that, but then it goes all the way to, we have a very hierarchical organization that because typically here in Asia, organizations tend to basically don't delegate power in the same way that is delegated in Europe, and especially compared to Scandinavia, where Scandinavia, people trust each other as a default, where, if you do something wrong, then immediately you lose trust. But you need to get to that point where in this part of the world, the default is that you don't trust each other. Mm-hmm. And then to earn the trust, it takes like a long time and a lot of effort. That basically means that organizations, when they have to make decisions, when they need to basically decide how the design of a product, a service, or an important decision around budget for a specific activity you want to run, will need to always escalate up. And eventually it means that people tend not to decide, and tend to say, let's do everything. Let's put everything in this screen, since we don't want to piss off the one at the top. Exactly. So then you end basically with an oversaturated, not well structured, and that's been a default. The other thing that I think is quite relevant is that how design is understood, how it's educated, and from the very early days. Having lived in Finland, kids of very early age, they are already educated into understanding the concepts of good design, bad design. They are introduced to iconic designers and iconic design architects already from very early days. And design is associated, not necessarily, it's associated with quality, which is one of the things that I also educated as a value, that you need to strive for excellence, and excellence in the form of good quality, because it's going to work, it's going to last in an environment where if it doesn't, then it's going to probably rotten, and it's going to be a problem for you that you will need to fix. But in this part of the world, I don't think kids are educated in the same way. I think or they have been educated in that way. I think there's a confusion in this part of the world or misconception in associating luxury with quality, when quality doesn't necessarily associate with luxury. And I think good design can bring really good quality in terms of products and services without having to be completely luxury. It doesn't need to be always expensive, right? Or exclusive, which is the other association to luxury.
Yes, I am somehow optimistic when it comes to this. I've seen drastic generational switch between the young adults before COVID and the young adults today. I'm thinking about China in particular. Before, it's true, China was the epitome of what you just said: luxury, expensive, good. Shiny, if shiny, better. Now, what I've seen is that the average Chinese, they say the normal Chinese, is more philosophical, is more thoughtful,
more pragmatic as well.
More pragmatic, and I think kids are valuing experience, are valuing more quality now. Of course, when you have to Chinese society is especially good at embracing changes, but we are talking about a huge population and just a small, let's say, segment of it. It is. I hope to see these changes. I mean, in the absurd, the absurdity, we can go to Taobao.
Yeah.
And this I mentioned before. It's my obsession. It's one of the most difficult web pages to surf, to navigate. How can this happen?
Yeah.
And then on the other side, I think in any industry, Chinese are a power force. They manufacture, they deliver super fast. They just, I think they have a huge opportunity, and it translates to people like you in how they package, how they design their services.
Yeah.
Do you see some, let's say, good signs, optimistic signs in the horizon for this?
I think yes. So connecting a little bit first with what we were discussing before, I think there is hope because there is a change on values that we are starting to see, and obviously the new generation, like you said, I mean, they care probably a lot less about consumerism, even in this part of the world that they used to. I think the second thing is that we are seeing is well, in the design schools, for instance, I mean, in this part of the world, still the majority of the applicants tend to be girls, 80% here in Hong Kong. And I think it's because families still here today, they want the primogenic to basically go and find a job that is going to bring lots of money, typically in the financial industry. So I think we need to basically see a further change. We need to basically see a change in the values that the people don't necessarily want to always find the best paid job, but actually they want to choose the job that is fulfilling them as a person. And I think that we're starting to see that change, but I think more change is going to come. Then if I take my day-to-day job and I put my European Chamber hat, I can definitely see that there is a significant shift at the moment in the way that the Chinese companies and organizations are starting to see their role in the world. So they've been little by little over the last decades showing their ambition by taking more steps up towards the top of the value chain in the ecosystems that they control. To the point that today, with the advanced manufacturing that they have introduced in most of the factories across the border, there is very little chance for factories anywhere else in the world to compete with them, to have the output that they managed to get. So when you think about what is next for Chinese companies, they are only 1 or 2 steps from being the ones that are actually designing the brands, the global brands that are going to dominate the markets. And they are only 1-2 steps ahead from not only the designing of those brands, but actually from being very successful globally. So understanding how to grow and market a global brand.
100%. I agree with you. Side note. Sorry to interrupt.
So we start to see in a few segments where they are clearly ahead of everybody else, and they've been ahead of everybody else, like the mobile telephones. We see it with, obviously, with nowadays with electric vehicles. But I think it's just a matter of time that, I mean, they figure out that, okay, they could be doing the same thing with furniture. They could be doing the same thing with whatever is manufactured today in China. The low end of the manufacturing, the labor intensive, they have already outsourced that to other parts of the world, where the labor force is cheaper. Partly also because they had to find ways to deal with the trade challenges that they faced in the last years, but they're still controlling the value chain. Now, the next step is basically just to start either importing branding experts, branding and designers, product designers, which they already are doing. Maybe the next step is actually to start bringing agencies and marketers that are going to help them to build and grow those brands to take over, right? And then the question will be, what is the rest of the world going to do when that comes?
we're gonna ask them, can you please give me a hand? No, I when I was in Shanghai last week, and I was speaking to my wife on the phone, and I said, every time I come to China, I feel like I'm traveling to the future, because you see in the little things, from just hiring a car to paying for the groceries with your phone, to just the way they communicate dash sell everyday products, their atomization of the communication in nano, mid-size, and somehow large influencers that, as individuals that have built around themselves the technology enough to be able to broadcast live, a new lamp by a company from Venice to 15,000 people on a Thursday afternoon. And this is like a very, very, very small example. When you apply this to everywhere else, and you then go back to a trade show in Milan, and it's like going back to the Middle Ages.
Yes.
The thing is, my view for China is super optimistic, because when they will learn how to package and explain what they do, they will be trendsetters.
Yes.
Because they have already been trailblazing the future. They just need to make this jump.
I think the hope for some of the industries that still are, somehow concentrated outside China, like the creative industries around advertising and marketing, is that traditional education in China is still very much about memorizing, following, and the out of the box is not necessarily the most a recurrent value taught in China. However, that is also changing. A lot of also Chinese educated abroad are coming back and bringing that new way of looking at things in some of the most successful organizations. Now, cascade down, how long it will take to cascade down to other sectors, this is probably the trick. In the meantime, what I think it will happen is that we're going to see a change in the flow of the traditional investment currents. We used to have basically the flow of investment from the Western world into Asia. I think we're going to start seeing more and more like the reverse effect. The current situation in China is that, a lot of wealth is basically being saved and accumulated because they are not spending and they are not investing. And I think that sooner or later this will need to find a channel out. The most natural for me, and I think the recommendation that I would give them, is that you are going to need consumers of the products that you manufacture. So what better than actually investing in creating jobs or keeping jobs in those markets that you want to serve, so like in Europe, so that you basically invest in buying or invest into companies, factories already existing in, or build companies in Europe, so that you generate jobs. Then the current image will actually become better, because at the moment is a little bit associated with job destruction. And then eventually you will also have consumers that will be able to pay for the products that you want them to buy.
100%. It is quite shocking when you actually realize the day and night difference between the opinion on China of people that live close to China, which normally tends to be positive, and opinion of people that live far away from China, which undoubtedly is negative almost all of the time. So as soon as they are able to bridge this gap, for sure they will be super successful. There is one hot topic. I have here a section called Hot Topics that we haven't touched, and I know that some people might be a little bit bored of talking vaguely about artificial intelligence, but I don't want to pass the chance of having you in front of me, an expert in design, which is apparently, people say, one of the fields that is going to be mostly disrupted by the arrival of this new third industrial revolution, or probably fourth, because third was the internet. We are talking about the fourth. Can you give us your take on how the integration of AI tools is going to happen? Is now in the short term,
will be in the mid and long term, please?
Yes. Look, first of all, I think any organization should take very seriously the impact that AI is going to have on them. And if only because there are risks associated, and if only because you want to be prepared for the potential risk that that will bring, you would definitely need to look into it. In our case, that's what we do internally, but also with our clients. And we are very careful about, understanding the impact before we start looking into getting our hands too dirty. The second thing is that you're absolutely right. I think there are certain, we are not seeing the tip, we are actually just seeing the beginning of the formation of the wave, in the sense that I think there will be certain domains that are going to first be the ones that immediately will see applications that are going to change to a large degree the productivity or the performance. And in the fields that I work, I mean, clearly everything related to customer experience that can be optimized by introducing tools that allow you to treat customers in a more humane, simple, easy way to resolve some problems, like call centers or bots that help you to really, with a human tone, with a human voice, really listen to what your concerns are. I think that's definitely here. That's definitely happening. Mm-hmm. You were talking before about how cluttered is Taobao. I think I don't have a right vision on this yet, but I'm starting to wonder whether we will have internet in the way that we have experienced internet in the last 25 years in the future. Why do you need corporates or marketplaces that have thousands and thousands of pages of content created? It will be, to some degree, you will basically be able to express what you're looking for. Mm-hmm. And then you will basically get a response for what is the most accurate to what you're looking for, without having to create a lot of content. It will be a lot self-created and curated for you. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the effort that has gone in the past into creating digital content is going to definitely be a lot less.
Okay.
But then at the same time, some of the professions and jobs that we have seen, created in the last 20 years, they are not necessarily going to disappear. They are just going to become more efficient. So you will still need people that are making decisions about what is the best way to present something, what is the best way to explain something, and that will come where design artificial intelligence tools come at very hard, is because before, when you had to do an exploration for different types of themes, or you could do palette, the typical mood boards, mm-hmm. and now you can do thousands of iterations. If you had to design a bridge, you probably can have now 1,000, 2,000 variations before you choose the ones that you basically want to test, right? So I think now you can have a lot more done in less time, but you still need to have somebody that has to guide the process and actually knows what is the best of the different solutions, right?
I am, again, probably selfishly, I am optimistic for the future, because I think counterintuitively the person will be very important in certain stages. Before, we had a bunch of people communicating via a digital medium. Now that digital medium is easily built, faked, reproduced, so there will be a realm of things, of tedious things that we're not going to do, but in order to be able to deal with each other, that personal touch is going to be super important. For example, now I can open a client in Melbourne, Victoria, via Zoom. I send them all the information. We speak about the conditions. We see each other face to face, and we believe we have a connection. That is not going to be probably 100% trustworthy in a short time. So it will be more important than ever that I get into a flight, I go there and I shake their hand and we go for lunch and we look into each other in the face and we see the human interaction. So I'm not necessarily, let's say, pessimistic about the adoption of AI. I'm never pessimistic, but I think I have reasons not to be. For example, one of the key questions I bring up in this podcast, because it's recorded in Hong Kong, a lot of us live in Hong Kong, is what's going to happen with this city, and I have opinions from all walks of life. You've been here 9 years. What do you think? What's going to happen with us?
Well, again, maybe with my hat of the European Chamber, chair of the European Chamber, is a lot easier to talk about this. I think Hong Kong has gone through a very turmoiled past 5 years, in the sense that we have gone through a lot, and it has been difficult to get out of the COVID, but I think that the current administration did a great job into take us through those first months and first year out of a very difficult situation. I think everyone underestimated how challenging was the situation, because we still have sectors of the economy that are very much impacted, right? Like the retail, tourism, hospitality, they have not recovered to the levels that we all remember from before COVID. So I think it's very clear that we need to do more about different things in order to basically get the situation back to close to what it was, right? Look, the first thing that the European Chamber, we keep talking, is that we missed a couple of tricks when we had so many foreigners, expat talented workers leaving Hong Kong in 2020, because that reduced the pool of talent, and that reduced also the number of the diversity that the city had, that made a lot of the what Hong Kong is so special. That was replaced with over the first years, it has been replaced mostly by mainland Chinese workers, which it has shifted the demographic mix of the city. So all of a sudden, everyone is thinking, because the natural way to get out of a crisis is basically look at the low-hanging fruit, and China is the lowest hanging fruit. Everybody thought, okay, let's focus on China as a market. Let's try to bring more people that understand China as a market. But by doing that, we were actually turning our back to another big component of the city, which is that it was an international hub, especially for Asia. And we forget that lots of companies had here the headquarters for this part of the world. And a lot of them, they have actually reduced their or downsize those headquarters to become more like regional or even domestic, right? To get that back is going to be challenging, because it means that we need to acknowledge that we need to go back to be relevant in those markets. It means that we need to bring experts in those markets. And that is where I think it's important that organizations realize that you should hire people, diverse people, not only people that speak Chinese, but also try to bring people that are probably experts in international markets and therefore bring more diversity back to the city. The second thing is that the level of English has also deteriorated in the last years. And I think that is very evident. If you go to universities and you talk to professors, they will tell you that the students coming from mainland speak better English than those coming from the schools in Hong Kong.
I wouldn't have expected that.
Yes, so I think that's very revealing when you basically hear that, and then one needs to do an analysis of why is that? Why Hong Kong has forced itself to forget that English was one of the most important values or elements that make Hong Kong so unique. It's also very evident in the service industry. If you want to go tomorrow and take a taxi, the likelihood that doesn't speak English or is very high, when it was not the case before. So if you want to really make this an international hub. You need to treat that as an element that you want to take care for.
Mhm.
Let's talk about broadcasted media or media in general. How many channels broadcast or write in English? It has also reduced significantly in the last year. So I think all this contribute to the fact that Hong Kong is no longer perceived as international as it was before, and is a lot more perceived as being an international Chinese city, you know.
Yep.
But so then if you want to really look into what Hong Kong needs in order to really get out of this situation where the economy is taking time because it's hard to attract people to come to work and hard to bring people to visit, you need to short circuit somewhere. You need to really stop these problems by basically intervening. And I think the intervention could be from the public sector. It needs to come also from the private sector, but the public sector probably needs to make a stand about the use of English in media, or the using of English in the schooling system. I also think that it's important that we start developing a vision for what Hong Kong is going to be in 10, 20 years from now. Mm-hmm. And it's a vision that I believe should actually be built bottom up. So you need to involve the population, you need to inspire the population about, listen to what their dreams are, but try to inspire also in what they could actually become in order to be differentiated in the world. And then try to distill this into something that is going to be like the inspiration, ambition that everybody's going to align behind, but then have a charismatic leader that is willing to basically take this as the roadmap for the next generation. And I think this is something that I still miss today. I think that we should definitely look forward to get and demand from the government.
Amen to that. I think it's a beautiful message. I have to say that again, if we look at how Hong Kong has evolved in the recent years, there is reason to smile. There was I lived in Hangzhou in 2012. At the time, mainland China was a very open country to foreign influences. They were happy to meet you and to party with you, and they would welcome you. They would even treat you unfairly well compared to a normal Chinese national. Then from that time up until I can say last year, there was a progressive closure onto themselves, in which everything that mattered was only Chinese. And you could see that in the difficulty in getting visas, in the influx or the outflux of expats and the lack of influx. But the last few times I've been to China, and it's a great relief, because I'm gonna have to travel a lot in the near future. People are friendly again, but even in customs, even you go and people are smiling to you. Please use this line. There is less people, and they're trying to make your life easier and more pleasant. And I think that's a message from up down. And Hong Kong has recently tried to follow those guidelines. So it's only a matter of time until the government realizes this, and hopefully we will go back. I don't want to say to the same, because things need to evolve, but to more Chinese but more open Hong Kong, which I don't think is a bad equilibrium. Iñaki, I enjoyed this conversation a lot. It was everything I thought it was going to be and more. I hope you had a good time.
Fantastic. No, thank you very much for inviting. It's always a great moment when somebody is inviting you to really talk, but it's even more joyful when it's with you, and we are able to actually spar ideas and your experiences as well. Thank you very much for that.
You are too generous. Everyone else, hope you liked it. We are not recording this on a Friday because we are both very busy people, and we found time on a Monday, but this is going to be published on a Friday afternoon, so we are about to go on the weekends. I wish you the best for that. David, thank you very much. It's always cool to have you. Fist bump, because if you look there, you don't see the egg. Iñaki, this is your home.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome to be back.
Of course, yeah.
Everyone be happy. Ciao, ciao.
Thank you.